policy. And this is meeting number 6. So welcome everybody. Nice to see you all. I hope you're all healthy. I hope you're well, and I wish you best for 2021. I am ably assisted tonight by our facilitator, Mo, and my colleague, Kaz. And we also have Naya and Jeremy working the back of the Zoom magic, and they do an excellent job. I also want to welcome our folks from the City of Eugene. So we've got folks from Eugene Police Department, we've got folks from the City Prosecutor's Office, and we have folks from the Police Auditor's Office. Welcome to you all. And another welcome is in order. We have a new member with us tonight. So Ibrahim Koulibaly from the NAACP, welcome, very much welcome, and glad that you're here with us. Hello, and let us know if you have any questions or how we can be helpful, not only to you, Ibrahim, but to the rest of the committee. With that, Mo, I'm going to toss the microphone back to you.
Back to me.
Yes.
Hi, everybody. I'm excited to be back at it. Our first item after the welcome is a question and answer session about body-worn cameras. And so we've got Lieutenant Angie San Miguel, Travis Smith, Leah Pitcher, and Captain Eric Klinko here to answer any questions that came up for y'all while you watched the videos. So as a reminder, I'm gonna look and I'm gonna do my best to see if you're raising your hand like this, but I can't see everybody at once. So if you can raise your hand on the Zoom, that would be extra helpful. And I'll just keep a running list of who's talking when. This is like the quietest you've ever been, friend. Maybe I'll ask our guests if they have anything they feel like they wish they would have included in the videos. Maybe we'll start there.
This is Angie San Miguel. I think I made probably the first video you watched, the body-worn camera video. And I don't think I have anything to add that wasn't in the video, but I'm sure you guys will think of something. So I'm sure you'll have questions.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's Leah. I made a video after Angie, so thank you, Angie. And I just wanted to say thank you again for asking for information. I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Hi, I'm Travis Smith. I'm the city prosecutor for Eugene, and I made a video as well. I don't have anything to add, but if you have anything in particular about how my office utilizes body cam and some of the benefits we're seeing, I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. I see that Lindsay has her hand up. Lindsay Foltz.
Hi. So thank you all for your presentations. I think they're really helpful, efficient way for us to get information before we show up here. So thank you. It allows us to do some pre-work. I will make one comment and then ask a question. I appreciated, Leah, in your presentation where you discussed some areas that we could expand the use of body cams. For example, I think it's important that you noted that SWAT does not have body cams. This became an issue when we were reviewing the community impact case with the protests. So I'm here to also add my voice to this. SWAT doesn't have body cams. And while my understanding is they're also not necessarily going to be utilized in the same way in future protest response, I still think that SWAT having body cams and all teams having body cams is important to me. You also discussed the issue of people who get called out from home. So that sometimes happens when people are on special teams, or something extraordinary happens when people get called in from home that they don't have body cams. So I think that that's important to keep in mind, that maybe it would be good to invest for special teams who are routinely called out from home, that they have access to body cams and chargers at their residence so that they can go out into the field fully equipped, just like they carry all their other equipment, right? If they get called out from home. My question for Travis Smith has to do with retention periods of videos. You mentioned sort of in passing that some of the cases that you're seeing are more aged than typically would be because of COVID and some of the issues that you've encountered in processing cases. Have you run up against any issues where a piece of evidentiary video has not been retained long enough for you to process the case, or do you ever run up against any of those challenges?
I don't, but I do want to preface by saying that my response is going to be different than, say, like a DA's office, because we're a giant misdemeanor department, as I kind of articulated in the video. And so we move very quickly. And so that hasn't necessarily been an issue. Our retention for body cam video and everything within the program we use, which is the same as EPD, is more than adequate. We have a 5-year requirement internally for just law enforcement records. But EPD is actually the record holder for the, so I essentially get the video and then I get to use it while we're utilizing it for the case. And then as soon as the case is resolved, the record holder for that case defaults back to EPD, and they're responsible for retaining it.
So can I ask a follow-up question? Then in the case where you may have a felony where there is no statute of limitations, then it may be a different scenario where, or a longer statute of limitations, you may run up against issues where not retaining a video for a long period of time could become problematic, theoretically.
Well, I think hypothetically that could be an issue, but again, we're only misdemeanors because we're a municipal court, so we don't have felonies. I can't speak on behalf of what the DA's office retention policy is. And in regards to what EPD's retention policy is for body cam, that's something that I'll let them answer.
Sure. I think I suspect that I would like a longer retention period. I'm just trying to figure out if it's reasonable.
And I think I can answer that.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Lieutenant.
Oh, I was just going to say on the PowerPoint that I did, I put our retention schedule in the PowerPoint. And homicides and felony sex crimes, those are held basically forever until they're manually deleted. And the higher the level crime, the longer the retention. And
that works for me when I think, and that makes sense to me when we know that a crime has been committed like by a citizen. But since these videos capture potentially crimes or other things that have been committed by officers, it's not like the officer is going to be like, hey, I committed this crime, please go look at this video, right? Like, so it just seems like there may be some benefit to longer retention even of incidentally collected video. Anyway, thank you for your answers and your time.
Any other questions for our guests?
Guadalupe Quinn has her hand up.
Yeah, I just was seeing that. Guadalupe?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's hard for me to tell if anybody's seen it. I don't want to be annoyed like a kindergartner.
It's okay. It's all good.
Yeah, I just wanted to ditto what Lindsay said around, and I think the video that talked about SWAT not having a camera, I think was Leah's video. I can't remember watching all 4 of them, and that to me was a little surprising. The other thing I was kind of wondering about the reason why maybe an officer wouldn't be using a camera, would have one, is because they're called out from home or something happens and they happen to be at home. Is that the same thing? What happens to officers who are off duty and in the community and something comes up? Is that sort of considered the same thing as an incident or being called out from home? I'm just kind of wondering.
Sorry,
Who
I think
wants to take that?
Angie may be able to answer this better than I can because I'm a civilian, but I would say hypothetically, you know, someone who's off duty wouldn't have a body cam on, and if they saw something that they interjected themselves in, they wouldn't have that video. So that's an interesting problem, and I'm not sure, you know, asking people to carry them around in like purses or backpacks, I'm not sure. But I think what Lindsay said about potentially having some at home with charging units or something could be feasible. I don't know if Angie has a better answer than that. I apologize. Also, hi, Lupe, good to see you.
Yeah, I guess I would just say that it's not overly realistic to expect officers to carry them around in their off-duty time when they're, you know, at their kids' baseball game or grocery shopping or doing those day-to-day things. However, for officers that we know are on a team in which they could be called out at a moment's notice, you know, it is something to consider having them manage the equipment at home, keeping in mind that, you know, there's union involvement and you know, sometimes people have to be compensated for doing all that kind of stuff off duty. But the majority of people, when they get called in, SWAT and patrol officers who are on special teams and even detectives, a lot of times they respond to the agency to get their other equipment and or their vehicles before they respond to the scene. So it's not the majority of call outs, people really do respond to headquarters first to gather some equipment and whatnot. So, you know, that's something to consider too, that people don't generally respond directly to the scene, although sometimes that does happen.
Do we have any other questions for our guests? Ems?
I guess this one's also for Lieutenant Angie. It's more to see if you have a solution or a idea on how to fix this problem. So what I see is that communities tend to see accidents like dropping the video cameras falling or being blocked or etc. malfunctioning. It hurts not only the how the community views you, and it also affects the credibility of the police. So why, and especially because the cases that usually, well, at least that we see that tends to happen, it's big profile cases that have been used for excessive force or police shootings. So do you have any comments on whether is the way that the cameras are attached? Is there any type of solution to that problem? Do we need to just really get extra Velcro here? I don't know.
Yeah, we've had a number of incidents over the years where, particularly when officers are involved in physical confrontations, where, you know, say they're fighting with someone, that the body cameras do get knocked off. You know, we've tried several different mechanisms for holding them on, and Axon, the company we work with, is continually working to make stronger devices to hold them on. Some of them are magnetic, some of them are Velcro, some of them are clips. So we're constantly working around that. There's also the issue of body placement, depending on where you have the camera on your body. If you have your arms out in front of you, say holding a taser, you could inadvertently block the camera with your arm, and that does happen. So it's something that we're continually looking at to try to avoid those technical malfunctions, so to speak.
Thank you.
Rick, and then Marty.
Thank you. I think we need to keep in mind that the job of the officers is to be police officers, not cameramen. And it's nice to have the cameras there, but I don't think that they should be held to a standard of being a registered guard cameraman on the scene. I think it's great that we have the availability of the cameras. I think they perform a great function. But for us to talk about extra Velcro and materials like that, I think we need to, let the police department do the work on that and work with Axon, the manufacturer, and come up with whatever the best possible way is to secure them. Their job is not to be camera people.
Marty and then Silver.
Yeah, I wanted to continue on the topic of disabled video equipment. I think we heard of incidents where there were multiple police on an incident and somehow all of the cameras were disabled at the same time. Like it seemed like there must have been an off-camera signal or something to coordinate such an event. I want to know from the police department, what's the response from supervising officers when there's evidence of intentional disabling of cameras?
So just speaking from my perspective, I have not seen, even when I was working in internal affairs, and maybe Leah can speak to this, I have not seen incidents where officers have all disabled their cameras at the same time or turned them off. What I think what you may be speaking to is when officers have muted the cameras, meaning they turned off the audio part. And sometimes officers will do that all at the same time. And by policy, they're allowed to do it under certain circumstances, tactical situations and whatnot. There is some discussion about changing the policy around that and tightening it up because, we feel that, and Leo will agree, I think, that there's times when it's probably not necessary that they muted, but that they did. And they left them muted too long or forgot to turn them back on. So I think what you're talking about is them muting it, not disabling it altogether, unless there are situations I'm not aware of.
I have the same memories as Angie, and I agree that the muting issue is something that's come up. And I will tell you that as I think I said in the video, although it was a while ago, we review a lot of video, and if we see muting almost at all, but if we see muting that's questionable, we'll bring an allegation of misconduct and investigate why that happened.
Okay, so I've got Silver. Lindsay's hand was up. It's not up anymore. It's not up anymore. Okay, so Silver and then Ibrahim Koulibaly. So Silver.
I also, Mo, I've seen Ib Hamid's hand a few times, and I know it's hard for you to see all the people. So I'll let you know.
Sorry, thank you.
So I was gonna ask for some sort of mechanism that would make it so that if the body camera was put off in a questionable situation, that there would be some sort of a guard against that, and that the officer could be seen as responsible for that situation. I don't want to have these cameras, malfunction or turn off when it's especially a life and death situation, as what happened with Eli Rodriguez. And I don't want to respond to this, but I'm going to have to, as a person who is just on a gut level sucker punched by what you said, Rick Rosetta. This is a committee that is looking at police issues surrounding people of color in this community. And for you to say that we shouldn't be messing around with extra possible ways to keep those cameras secure, it is just an affront to all of the work that we're doing here. If it's an issue of cameras falling off and we can get extra footage or tape to make sure that happens, I, as a person who serves on the police commission, who's made sure that these policies go through, cameras always on, always filming. That is an affront to the work that we're doing here. And I cannot believe you said that.
It's me now?
Yeah, thank you, Sylvan.
Okay, I want to echo what Silver said. I don't know where this comment is coming from. Yes, the police officers are not, they don't work for KVAL News, they don't work for KZI 9 News, we all know that. But it's part of the equipment. And to come here and sit here and say that there are no cameramen, why not get rid of the cameras? Why not get rid of the cameras altogether? So my question is about, I don't know, that comment kind of like threw me off. I wanted to ask why the SWAT team doesn't wear camera. Because I think on one of the video, I don't remember, it was Leah said that the SWAT team doesn't have a body worn cameras. And my second question would be around the access to the footage. Who have access to the footage, and do they have to make a specific request, within the police department to go back and look at the footage, or any police officer can access to the footage as they get uploaded in the cloud? Thank you.
So let me answer the first part of the question first. So as far as access to the footage goes, only the officers involved with a particular call have access to view that video footage. However, detectives who do follow up on those cases also have a certain level of access. And then supervisors and managers, all the way up to the chief of police, have access to view only the videos. They can't change them, they can't delete them, they can't alter them. And then our evidence control unit manages the videos, and they share them with the DA's office and the city attorney's office, who in turn share them with the defense. And if a public records request comes through, then the evidence control unit shares those as well. So if you're an officer, you can really only view your videos or cases you're involved with. If you're a detective or a supervisor, you can view other people's, but sensitive cases, say an internal affairs case or an officer involved shooting or something of that nature, that will be locked down. So only a very few people in the department can see it. That will not be available to detectives or the average patrol sergeant. So some videos are restricted at different levels. And then the first part of your question about why the SWAT team doesn't carry cameras at this point, honestly, it boils down to when we rolled out the program in 2017, we only had a certain amount of money through our grant, and it would only cover about 160 cameras at the time. And with the number of sworn officers we would have had to give SWAT team officers 2 cameras, and we didn't have enough to do that, because when they respond to a SWAT call out, they go to a different location. And the way the cameras are stored at police headquarters is when officers get off duty at the end of their shift, they put their camera in a docking station, and it uploads all their videos from the entire shift, and then it charges it for their next shift. So the camera will stay in that docking station until they come back to work. And if I'm a SWAT officer and I get called, that I dock my camera when I go home at night and then get a call in the middle of the night, I actually respond to another location for my SWAT equipment and to respond out. So we just didn't have the money at the time to buy them a second camera each. I personally think it's a good idea to do that and to invest in that. But as you saw from my PowerPoint, it's expensive, and storing the footage is expensive too. So it really boiled down to money back in 2017.
I want, if I can jump in on the access part of the question too. I don't want to cut anybody off, but I just want to be clear that Mark and I, as civilian oversight, can see whatever video we ask for. So if we see a use of force complaint come in, or just any complaint come in from the community, we can then contact the department. Somebody in IA staff helps us. They're really, really incredibly fast. And we say, hey, get us all the video on from this time from these officers, and they'll provide us what we've asked for. So.
Thank you. I've got Ibrahim Hamide, and then Daniel, and then Kaz.
Hi. My question is about the police officers that are off duty. When they're called in, I heard that they have to stop at headquarters, pick up equipment most of the time. Therefore, body cameras can be part of that equipment they will have available to them. And if not, I'm curious about the cases when the exception happens. Are those really exceptional? In other words, they happen every blue moon, or is there any stats that are kept on that? That's my question. My little comment is that I too wish that the police officers do not become register guard cameramen, but I do agree with Silver and with Ibrahim that that's an affront statement, that we're not asking them to take about 35 different angles of the scene that they're encountering and give us the choice of which one to be published. We're just asking for transparency. I just want that to be on the record.
Thank you. Daniel?
I didn't get my question answered.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, okay, I think I can go ahead and answer that. I don't know what the percentage is of SWAT officers, when they get a SWAT call out, what percentage go to headquarters and get equipment and then go to where our SWAT office is. However, they are issued 2 handguns, they're issued extra set of equipment to be at the second location, so they don't have to come to headquarters. So in a true emergency, they don't necessarily want them stopping at headquarters, gathering equipment and going there. Special teams like our major collision investigation team and some of our detective units, if it's not an emergent situation, many of those will come to headquarters to pick up equipment or gear. Not always, but often. And I honestly don't know what the percentage is of, SWAT officers who swing by headquarters on their way to in Lincoln for their SWAT gear, but we do issue double sets of equipment to them so they don't have to in a true emergency. Probably not very thorough answer, but what I got.
Close enough, thank you.
Okay, Daniel?
I have 2 questions. The first one is, so I understand officers muting their audio if they're discussing tactical things. My question is, if, say, an officer failed to mute their audio or thought they were muting their audio, but in actuality they weren't, what can happen to the video after the fact, say after it was uploaded or anytime after the fact? Is it possible for them to go, oops, I should have muted, but I didn't? Is there a way for them to redact a portion of the audio and or the video after the fact, or once it's uploaded, it's locked in, but then is that audio discoverable? So that's my first question. Do you want me to ask both of them before getting answers, or in turn?
Go ahead and ask both, and if we have trouble getting answers for both, you can restate one.
Okay. The other one is that around people who file complaints. So I get that if a citizen files a complaint against a police officer, that the police auditor's office has access to that video. At what point in that process would the complainant have access to be able to see that video regarding the details of their complaint?
Okay, I think I'll answer the first part of that question. As far as the video, once it's uploaded, it cannot be altered or changed by the officer or their sergeant or their lieutenant. It can, however, be redacted by the evidence control unit, and they're trained to do that. Quite often, if we do a public records release, we have to redact portions of the video, and that can either be redacting the audio, or it can be putting like a blur over the face of certain individuals, or just making the whole scene kind of blurry so you can't like really identify individuals. So the redaction can happen after the fact, but only by the evidence control unit. In response to your the second part of your question, I think I'll let Leah answer the bulk of that, but it just depends. If someone were to file a complaint against an officer, the auditor's office obviously gets to see the video. And it's not uncommon that the sergeant will take a look at the video, and it is okay for the sergeant to share that or have the person who made the complaint come in, watch the video with the sergeant and talk about it. And that happens sometimes with service complaints. And I don't know, I'll let Leah answer whether or not sometimes the auditor's office, whether or not they share video, just not giving people copies of it, but allowing someone to watch it with them. I don't know if they do that or not, but we do it a little bit.
Just a couple quick follow-up questions on that, Lieutenant. So the first question being that is there a document, is it documented any video that was redacted or blurred after the fact, with documenting the reason for that happening? And the second question is, if that's the case, that can be redacted by that control unit, why is the officer even able to mute at all? Does the officer have to document why they muted
Daniel,
or
sorry,
self-redacted?
30 seconds.
So by policy, the officer is supposed to document or say on camera why they're muting. You know, for example, I'm Officer Smith, I'm muting so I can talk to my sergeant about whatever, and then you mute. So they are by policy supposed to say that. If a request is made after the fact for a redaction, the evidence control unit will document why it was requested and why it was redacted. So there would be a trail of the redaction and why that happened.
If Daniel, can I talk more to the complainant access to video? Okay. So the auditor's office is not the keeper of the public record, so we are not allowed under public records law to release that to anyone. So we wouldn't show that to a complainant on their own. We have, as Angie said, we have sort of in certain situations, we've talked to the complainant and talked to the sergeant, and most importantly, the involved employee has rights under the public records law that I've talked about before, where if the involved officer can say whether or not that gets released with their image on it. So anyway, so that's a decision that EPD makes as the keeper of the record when the complainant gets to see it. I will say, and Travis can speak to this, but if the person is involved in a criminal prosecution, they would have access to video as part of discovery. I hope that helps.
Thank you. Kaz.
Yep, just very briefly want to draw committee members' attention to the first motion that we have on spoliation. This is regarding Silverio's point about evidence remaining intact or us not having access to evidence. That the first motion says if a body-worn camera recording is recklessly, intentionally, or negligently destroyed or unavailable, officer testimony on the events contained in the recording should not be admissible in any civilian review board fact-finding process. So it just when you mentioned what you did, Silverio, just triggered the fact that there is an element of what we're discussing tonight that relates directly to what you were referring to, and at least with regards to internal processes, does start moving in that direction. So that's it from me.
Thank you. Lindsay?
So I have a clarifying question. So Kaz, are you asking us to vote on that motion, or are you asking us to take up discussion of that motion? Or
No.
what's
So
going on?
my apology. I was simply drawing the committee's attention and Silverio's attention to the fact that the precise thing that he mentioned is, or at least part of it, is on the agenda for tonight, and that should inform, or at least the members should be aware of it when they're engaging in these discussions.
I'm always forward thinking, Kaz.
True story. Anything else for our guests? I'm trying to look at your faces. Okay.
Hey Mo, I got something.
Okay, go ahead, Joel.
Thank you. Happy New Year's, everybody. Hope everyone had a restful holiday season. And thank you to our guests for being here this afternoon. I guess my question to you all is just, in the wake of the last sort of year or so, and really the last 6 months of, social unrest and uprisings across our country, I'm curious to hear from you all what you see the potential use or not use of body cams are in the future. Is it something that is effective? Is there a way to make them better? Or is it something that do we need to change directions?
I see Angie's jumping in too. Do you want to go first?
No, go ahead.
Okay. I have found body camera footage to be extraordinarily useful over the last several years that we've been using it, but especially over the last 6 months. I think we just closed, well, we're working on closing the community impact case from the last weekend in May in Eugene, and there was over 600 hours of video to watch, which was daunting, but extraordinarily helpful to get a really much clearer picture of what's going on. So I do think that there are ways to expand and improve how it's used. I think it's tough because I do get concerned about privacy rights and all of that, but I will say in my professional life, it is extraordinarily valuable to me.
And I'll just clarify my question, as well. I think what I'm trying to get at is, it seems like body cam footage is great for things after they happen, but a large portion of, I think, what we're trying to accomplish in this group, and a conversation that we're not just having in this community, but in communities across the country and across the world, is how do we stop Black and brown people from being killed by law enforcement agents?
Yeah.
And the question to you all is, does the body cam have any impact on stopping Black and brown people from being killed?
So I don't know if I can speak directly to that point. Let me make sure I'm not muted. But I think the body cameras, obviously, they help with transparency across the board. But I think for us, they help a lot with the ability to manage and supervise our people. So to look at videos after the fact to make sure that officers are doing the right things, treating people with respect, you know, just doing their job properly. So I think it really helps with the management and training and supervision and sometimes disciplinary situations. I do think it can help with that. And I think it has. I do think the program could be expanded, you know, maybe to include SWAT. I think the policy could be tightened up a little bit in regards to some things like muting the camera or muting the audio. So I think there's room for improvement, but I think if we use it as a tool to kind of make ourselves better, it's a win-win.
I think, so there have been sort of conflicting results in the studies about whether body worn cameras actually reduce use of force or not. And I have my own theory about why they may help in some departments and not others. I think in my experience, they help with a culture of accountability that can produce better behaviors. I think having a culture where you know not only that people are watching in real time, like your fellow officers and people on the street and in the community are watching to make sure that you're doing your job right. I think between that and knowing that you have oversight and you have people who are going to be picking over this, that can feel like a lot of pressure, but I think with the right culture that can help the organization do better with its community. That's my hope.
Thank you both so much for those canned answers, and I apologize for putting such a large question on you both, but I really appreciate your response, your thoughtful responses. I'll use my time. Thanks, Mo.
Awesome, thank you. Silver's got a comment on that, and then, oh, Lindsay put her hand down. Okay, Silver. And then we're gonna move on.
Yeah, just as a person who was there from the formation of the policy, who was on the police commission from before the policy to after, I would say that I think that it's been extremely beneficial. I do not like the station cameras. I hate any kind of private. I have tons of privacy concerns regarding the drones. You know, Sergeant Williams and I had some conversations regarding the drone footage and but all of that aside, I think the body cam footage has been very valuable, and I think it's something that the department has seen some good things come out of that policy. I'm glad to be a part of that policy, and I'd like to see it sort of you know, twerked with, as we've mentioned earlier. But I all in all, I think it's been a really beneficial thing for the EPD.
Okay, I see Ibrahim Koulibaly, and then we're moving to item 3.
Thank you, Mo. I just have a question about the footage. Have there been any disciplinary action taken afterward based on the camera's footage? Is there an example or situation where the police department watched the footage and had to discipline an officer based on what was on the body cam?
So yes, that has happened. Discipline all the way from documented counseling to a suspension to, in fact, we've terminated officers, and situations where an incident was caught on camera and then, you know, maybe some additional review was done or other situations arose, and we've actually terminated officers because of body-worn camera footage. And we've also taken minor disciplinary action to try to correct behaviors and stuff too. Leah may have more to comment on that.
I was just gonna say yes. That's, I mean, yes, definitely that has happened. I think between the community complaints that we receive and then the video evidence that we're able to review, and supervisors watching their employees through review of video, we're able to catch and hopefully correct minor misconduct and in different ways. So yes, discipline has definitely occurred based on what's seen on body worn camera and in-car video from, you know, back in the day. So.
I see Daniel's hand. I really would like us to move on. So if you can be quick, Daniel. Go ahead.
Yes, I can be. So it's my understanding that a bystander that it's legal for a bystander to take video of an interaction with a police officer. Is it in any way a violation of law or policy for that for a police officer to tell a bystander to stop taking the video or to put their camera or phone away?
So Travis may want to speak to this, but it is.
I can, yeah.
It is, okay.
So the classic "it depends" answer is there, which is what all lawyers say. But what it really has to do with is not necessarily the taking of the video, but whether or not the physical actions that are happening with the individual who are taking the video is interfering with the police officer's ability to do his job. So if that can be proven factually, that the person has the camera out, they're moving around in such a way where they're keeping the officer from engaging in what he needs to do with the suspect, and they can articulate that, then that could be a potential interfering with the police officer charge. But in regards of the taking of the video from back, that's not something that I deal with in my office at all. Just someone standing in the background and recording.
And in fact, I believe it's no longer illegal in the state of Oregon that people can record police officers.
And I was just going to say there is something in the policy, or at least, Angie, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I seem to recall a case where we brought an investigation for an officer saying that someone couldn't be videotaping because they weren't clear about the distinction that Travis just noted between videoing and interfering.
Right, and that's what we train officers, that if someone wants to record you from across the street or a safe distance away, you really shouldn't be trying to interfere with that because that's their right. It's just when they get close enough where they're causing a problem or interfering with your investigation that you can do something. And that's how we train. I believe years ago, it used to be actually illegal to record a police officer, but I'm almost 100% sure it's no longer.
Awesome. Thank you so much to all three of you for being here and answering all sorts of questions. Feel free to stay and listen to the I'm sure riveting conversation about these 12 motions that we're going to be deciding. And if you want to get to your evening, you're free to go also. So moving on to the next item.
Mo, before we do that, just a minor procedural issue. Ibrahim Koulibaly was accidentally recording this meeting, and I just want to check with Naya that we are also recording the meeting to ensure that we've covered the first part of the meeting.
Yes.
Or if Ibrahim's is the only recording that we have due to...
No, we have a recording, Cass.
Okay, thank you very much.
Awesome, thank you. So this item, we're going to consider recommendations and motions from the Community Oversight Committee. And I'm actually going to ask two things. One is if Kaz can share his screen so that you can see this kind of list of proposals. I'm hoping that we can try something new because I heard that maybe some people didn't think we could make it through this entire agenda, and I have faith in you all. So I'm wondering if we can look at all of I think there's 5 of them, motions that were passed unanimously by the Community Oversight Group and vote on them as a whole. And so that's what you see on your screen. And if the conversation gets too messy and we need to split it up, then that's fine. But I would like to entertain a motion to vote on these 5 things. but someone has to make that motion.
I will move to vote on these 5 things.
Thank you, Brian. Was that Daniel?
Yes.
So if I'm correct, this is one of the first times that we're seeing this. I'd just like to, a minute before we make kind of I'm thinking maybe pulling one thing out, but I'd just like to look at this, these proposals before we make that full blanket statement, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry. It's in the agenda packet. These were all listed on pages 2 through 4. It's number 1, 3, 4, 6, and 12 in your packet. We just put them together.
Can I ask that someone read those 5 aloud?
Yes. So the first is a motion on spoliation. If a body-worn camera recording is recklessly, intentionally, or negligently destroyed or unavailable, officer testimony on the events contained in the recording should not be admissible in any citizen review board fact-finding process. The second one says it's a motion regarding the citizen review board, and it reads, a minimum of a quorum of members of the CRB shall be nominated by groups representing marginalized people. The third is another motion regarding the citizen review board. It reads, no member of the CRB should be a current or former employee of the police department that the board oversees, and a majority of board members should not have a law enforcement background. The next is also a motion regarding the citizen review board, and it reads, CRB members shall receive a stipend for their work. And the last one is a motion regarding the police commission. It reads, if the chief of police rules against a policy recommendation of the police commission, sorry, hold on. The commission shall have the right to appeal that decision to the city council by a majority vote, who shall decide on the policy in a public meeting. The city council's decision shall be final. So those are the 5 that I'm wondering if we could vote on as a group.
So I don't feel comfortable having the ad hoc subcommittee making decisions on police commission policy. But actually, I would agree with this particular policy motion. So for the future, if there's not somebody on the if there's not somebody on the police commission representing that subcommittee, I'm not making any motions for the HRC or the CRB. So
just to be clear, Silverio, these are not policy, these are pure recommendations. Okay. So they are what the committee would like the police commission to do, rather than an instruction as to what the police commission should do. And as such should be taken as indicative of the will of the committee rather than a demand of any kind.
Fair enough.
So we have a motion from Brian and a second from Daniel. Do we have any discussion on these 5?
I see
Lindsay's hand is up.
So I'm not wild about the motion on spoliation or the second one, not because I don't agree with the intention, but I'm not certain about the mechanism. And if that's the way that we get to the desired outcomes, I would feel perfectly comfortable voting on the last 3, but I would prefer that we have a little bit more discussion on spoliation and how we can achieve the desire of having more representation on the CRB.
What are your thoughts on that amendment, Brian and Daniel? Voting on the last 3.
I'm not sure if that was a recommended amendment or is that just an objection to the first 2 in discussing the issue? It sounds like you think, and I can be completely wrong, that Lindsay was trying to say to not put all 5 motions to the committee, but only the last 3. What I heard was she was in the discussion phase and expressing her opinion that she didn't agree with the first 2 motions. So I'm not sure if there's a motion from Lindsay or not.
It's just a discussion. It's just my opinion on voting on them in a lump of 5, I think is challenging. That's all. I don't know how else to discuss. Because I think the first 2, I would like to have more thorough discussion. And then the last 3, I don't personally have any questions about, but I don't know how other people feel. So I'm just throwing it out there. That's just my discussion.
All right, well, we'll find out. I see Joel's hand up.
Yeah, I just had a quick question for Lindsay. Could you talk a little bit more about your concerns over the first 2? Because it sounds like you don't have concerns about necessarily what they're doing, just how we get to the end. So I'm just curious if you could talk a little bit more about that, and also if you have a recommendation how to change the wording so that we can try to pass these through tonight.
So my concern with spoliation, so I'm not a lawyer at all, not trained in the law. It seems like the intent is to make sure that people are not recklessly, intentionally, or negligently destroying video. I don't want that. I think that's bad. I'll just be super clear. What I wonder is, how do we get to that goal of people not destroying video? So I'll say 2 things. One, I've seen a lot of video. I've seen a lot of circumstances where there's complaints. I haven't seen a lot of situations where this is a concern. So I guess if it's like, what is the problem we're trying to solve? Do I personally witness people frequently, intentionally, or negligently destroying their video? I don't personally see it. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen. I can just only speak to what I've seen. I haven't seen it a lot. We've talked about muting. I have problems with muting. That's a separate issue. But I wonder if making the policy about the video and then the consequences for, violating the policy about making sure your video is running is the appropriate mechanism. The other thing is, we don't receive officer testimony when we review CRB cases, so that's awkward. If the CRB took on another form, which is not something we have really moved towards, then I could maybe see it being this particular motion being more effectual. But if the goal is to make sure that the video remains intact and has integrity, I think the policy and then consequences for not following the policy seem like the way to get there, as opposed to this. That's part 1. Part 2, regarding the Civilian Review Board, I think I also would like to see more representation from marginalized peoples, however we are going to define that. I guess I worry about how we choose which groups do and don't get to decide who those people are. I don't know. I have lingering questions, and I just don't know, and would like to hear more about what other people think about how that mechanism might work. And that's it.
If I might quickly, Mo, respond unless there's someone else on tab.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, thanks, Lindsay, for sharing a little bit more. I think back to Kaz's point, it seems like these 5 motions are more so a suggestion for where council and the police commission could start. And so I think there's a way for us to perhaps reword, the first and second one and pass it through tonight, just because I'm pretty confident there's going to be a lot more conversation around this, and the police commission is going to have to chew on it, and council's going to have to chew on it. So, yeah, I feel comfortable with these 5, but I definitely hear your concerns. But like I said, it seems like there's a lot more work even after these pass. But check.
Okay, Silver.
Yeah, just as a person who's been a part of the representative body that decides on who's going to get put forward to the city council. I've made decisions with a group of a large percentage of people of color, BIPOC people. And we've done it at Ebe's place. Thank you, Ebe, for having hosted us. And I think part of that whole process just really depends on the people that are putting in for that position to the CRB. And I think a big part of the reason why people are not selected for that process is because of records, any kind of felony or any kind of offense that keeps them from being able to be a part of the CRB. I'd love to see more BIPOC representation on all of our commissions. And I'd love to see a stipend at the police commission as well. But I think it's a matter of looking at the process and sort of, getting more people who are able to advocate for BIPOC people in the community on those bodies that make those decisions.
Thank you. I see Alai and then Brian.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, thank you so much for bringing this up. I mean, I could see us having conversations till the end of time about each one of these. There's so many procedural and protocol issues that could be discussed about how they would be implemented. And I myself feel comfortable moving forward with the 5 recommendations. I keep thinking they are recommendations. They are ways of starting conversations. And for example, the one about a minimum of a quarter of members of the CRB being nominated by groups representing marginalized peoples. There's like so many ways to do that. That could be efficient, effective. It's just that we cannot decide that right now. Like it would really take a longer time and more conversations. But I know that those will be the conversations that will need to happen in all the spaces in the city that would decide how that would come to be implemented. And I hope that we will continue to be consulted around that too. But I think as recommendations, I feel comfortable moving forward and thinking that these are just ways to start conversations about how this could happen.
Thank you. Brian?
Yeah, I just wanted to address Lindsay's concerns on spoliation. First, I want you to know, the whole group to know, that in this committee was Mr. Rossetti, and with his input, we came up with this language as acceptable to him. As you can see, it was unanimously approved. The idea is there's a principle in law called spoliation, which essentially is if you spoil your own evidence, you can't present that evidence. And so it's sort of limited to that issue of evidence. How we keep, the police from not recklessly, intentionally, or negligently destroying or making their video unavailable. I think it's a much larger issue and problem than this motion addresses. It just addresses if the CRB passes these motions and they become the fact finder in the larger motion by Daniel about a matrix coming in where the police and the CRB agree beforehand which finding of fact would trigger which discipline. And in that, the CRB would conduct the fact finding. And limited to that hearing, a fact finding hearing by the CRB, what we approved was the evidentiary principle in courts of spoliation. Obviously, this motion will not affect any court proceeding. It only affects the CRB's fact-finding process. That helps.
Thank you. I see Silver and then Lindsay.
Actually, I lowered my hand, but I I made a point about it, and I think it's actually something that we should consider. If the CRB is going to get stipends, we should also see stipends for the HRC and the EPD Police Commission.
Thank you. Lindsay?
So Alai, thank you for speaking to the second motion in particular. That helps me. That makes perfect sense, and I feel comfortable with that. I still feel like the motion on spoliation seems like it belongs with all the other motions to change the process and the scope of the CRB. It, without all those other things, it doesn't make sense to pass on its own. So I guess I would request that the motion be amended to the last four, and that we discuss spoliation when we discuss all the other things that are related to the CRB and spoliation.
Okay. Brian and Daniel, what do you think about that amendment?
I will leave that to Daniel, because in reality, this originated as his motions.
Yeah, although I crafted the one on spoliation from your idea, Brian. I think that was originally one of your motions from our first subcommittee meeting. So I would be fine doing that, because I think you're absolutely right, Lindsay, that there is an aspect of this of modifying the role of the CRB that a lot of these motions that were not unanimous, that we'll discuss later, kind of fall under that rubric. So I'm fine with just looking at excluding the first one and looking at the remaining four as part of this omnibus motion.
Okay.
Can I make the friendly amendment then?
Yeah.
Can I
course.
make a friendly
Yeah,
amendment that we add the HRB, the HRC and the Police Commission to the stipend portion of this recommendation
Silverio,
or
that's
policy?
quite far outside of the, at least the HRC. It's quite far outside of the purview of this committee. The Police Commission, absolutely. But I don't think we can, it's within our charge to talk about the Human Rights Commission.
So then the Police Commission added to the Citizen Review Board stipend motion, please.
I would accept that as a friendly amendment.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to read these out loud because maybe that was hard for some folks to track. So the motion that we're going to vote on are the final four that you see on this list. A minimum quorum of members of the CRB shall be nominated by groups representing marginalized people. No member of the CRB should be a current or former employee of the police department that the board oversees, and a majority of board members should not have a law enforcement background. That police commission and CRB members shall receive a stipend for their work. And that if the chief of police rules against a policy recommendation of the police commission, the commission shall have the right to appeal that decision to the city council by a majority vote, who shall decide on the policy in a public meeting. The city council's decisions shall be final. I'm going to do a roll call vote, and we'll see what happens. So I'll start at the top. Ems?
Yes.
I can't hear you. Awesome, thank you. Daniel?
Yes.
Betsy?
Yes.
Macy?
Yes.
I didn't see D on our list, but I'll say D's name just in case. Ibrahim Koulibaly? You may be muted. Ibrahim. Okay. Leah,
Yes.
Abdul Rahman,
Yes.
Lindsay,
Yes.
Ebe.
Yes.
I didn't see Rick Hamilton on here. That is still true. Joel,
Yes.
thanks. I didn't see Erica on here. Jason,
Yes.
thanks. Justin, Justin Myers, are you not here? Okay. Brian,
Yes.
Silver,
I would say yes, but I'm going to abstain just because I would benefit from the stipend.
okay. Tana,
Yes.
Guadalupe,
Yes.
I don't see Marvin on here. Alai,
Yes.
Quentin, not here. Rick Rosetta,
I have to abstain also, as I'm a member of the CRP.
thank you. David,
Yes.
I think Leticia is not here either. Sandra let me know that she's abstaining. David Tam's not here. Patricia Toledo is not here. Midas,
Yes.
and Marty.
Yes.
All right, the motion carries. Thanks, friends. Now we'll tackle the other 8. So I'm just going to go in order. We're going to start with that motion on spoliation. I would entertain a motion, whatever it looks like, in a second, and then we can have discussion.
I will move.
Thank you, Brian. Do we have a second?
I'll second. And I'd like a discussion item as well.
Okay, thanks, Marty. Tis time for discussion. Do you want to start us off, Marty?
Yes, I just wanted to point out that as I've been reviewing what's going on in other cities and other states across the country, this is not uncommon. A lot of other places use the inadmissibility of testimony as a way to safeguard the use of body cam footage. And I just want to share that when I am looking at these policies, there is a part of me that wants to know what's happening here in Eugene and what applies to us in particular. But bigger than that, if there's something that I feel is a good thing, even if we don't see evidence of intentional destruction of video footage, it would still be good to put into policy that this is something that we feel should not happen, and that if it does happen, that there would be consequences.
Any other? There are many hands up. Brian and then Rick.
I don't think I had my hand up, or if I did, I did not do that intentionally. At least not yet.
Okay. Thank you. Rick?
the doctrine of spoliation is a rule of evidence that has to be exercised by a judge in ruling on whether evidence comes into a hearing. It is not typically a bar in the state of Oregon. It is a permissible inference. That means that what the judge would do at the end of the case would instruct the finders of fact that they have a right to distrust the testimony of the officer in the event that that item is being used. It's just like saying, if a piece of evidence has been destroyed in a, say, a product liability case, they've destroyed the brakes on the truck when they've been alleged that the truck has had the brakes fail and that they're suing the truck manufacturer. The court will allow the jury to make that determination that they disregard that testimony, but it's not an automatic mandatory inference. And so I agree with Lindsay that this is going to be very difficult to apply because there's going to be no judge to make that decision. And there's going to be no fact finder in the present setting.
Lindsay?
So I agree with what you're saying, Marty. I agree that we don't need to rely on sort of good faith actors in the creation of policy in general. I agree. I also agree that because the CRB doesn't currently receive officer testimony, this feels awkward to vote on this thing. And as Rick pointed out, there are other technical legal reasons why this particular mechanism is awkward for me until we pass all the other things, if we decide to go that way. So if the CRB becomes a fact-finding body, which it is not now, which is totally fine, let's talk about that, then it makes sense to talk about spoliation more. But as it is now, it just feels backwards. And I totally agree that we don't want officers intentionally destroying, and that we should bolster policies to not destroy video, right? So yeah, both and.
Okay, thank you. Marty?
I just wanted to respond to that. Maybe the friendly amendment is to take out the part that says the testimony is to the CRB. Maybe we just say that this makes your testimony inadmissible, no matter whether it's in internal affairs or wherever.
How does that land with folks?
I put my hand up because I didn't realize I had to take it down. I took it down and then I put it back up. If it's my turn, I'll talk. If it's not, I'll wait.
It's your turn.
All right. As in sympathy I am with Mr. Wilder's suggestion, there's no way this committee or even the city council could influence the admissibility of a police video in a court of law. In terms of spoliation, as Mr. Rossetti explained it in a court of law, it is a judicial decision. One way is to have it happen through a jury instruction, like Mr. Rossetti mentioned. And the other, which also happens, is the court gives the inference to the other side who didn't spoil the evidence. So, I sent out a case a while ago where the court ruled that it was a double manslaughter case and the state negligently left the brake parts out. So the defendant and expert could not inspect the brakes to see if the cause of the crash was the brakes or the driver. So therefore, the inference is that it was not. The inference is that it was the brakes. That's kind of neither here nor there, because what we do in a CRB, and if they are the fact finder, is we can essentially make our own rules. I mean, we're not governed by the laws of evidence in a court of law in any way, just like we cannot influence the evidence in a court of law. Spoliation is just a term to express a principle of evidence. with all that said, I think Lindsay and Mr. Rossetti are both correct in the sense that this may be premature. Once we decide whether or not the CRB will be a fact finder, then we can discuss whether or not certain rules and authorities will apply to them, or investigatory tools will apply to their fact finding. I would make a friendly amendment that we hold this off until a determination is made whether the CRB is in fact going to be a fact finding body.
Sorry,
Seeing as
Brian.
you are the person.
Just for the sake
Go
of
ahead, Kev.
clarity for the notes on this, are you suggesting that we table this, or are you suggesting amending the motion to say if the CRB is ... Because we could either come back to this later on in this discussion if there's time, or it seems to me that, and I'm not clear on which of the two you were suggesting, but saying if other things in this meeting go a certain way, then this would be applicable, would I think also solve the issue at hand. Which of those were you suggesting?
I was suggesting the inferior of the two, but I will accept your superior modification, which would be if the CRB becomes a fact-finding body, then this will happen. I think that's a much better way to do that. Thank you, Ken.
Okay. Daniel?
Yeah, that is actually what I was going to suggest, so I'll lower my hand and mute myself.
Okay. So with that amendment, I'm going to call for a vote. So the amendment of if it becomes a fact-finding body, then this is what we'd like. Am I getting all that right? Okay, I saw at least one head nod. I'll start at the bottom this time. Marty?
Yes.
Midas?
Yes.
Sandra, I'm wondering if you have your microphone. I know you're just listening. Okay. David?
Yes.
Rick?
No.
Alai? Oh, do we still have you in here? She just messaged me and said she was having tech issues, so she got booted out. Hopefully she comes back. Guadalupe?
Yes.
Tana?
Yes.
Silver?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Ebe?
Yes.
Lindsay?
No.
Abdul Rahman?
Yes.
Leah?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay. Ibrahim?
He just chatted.
Ibrahim?
He's having
Yes.
audio problems, but he's voting yes.
Okay, I see that. Thank you. Macy?
Yes.
Thanks. Betsy,
Yes.
Daniel,
Yes.
and M.
Yes.
Thank you. I count 16 yeses, 2 noes, and 1 abstention. So the motion carries. The next motion that we are going to talk about, we're going to hold on to this second one that's in your packet until the end because it got reworded. That's number 13 now. So we are going to go to it's number 5 in your packet. It's the motion regarding the Civilian Review Board, and it reads, the CRB shall have the power to request and obtain all evidence, documents, medical records, surveillance footage, and other materials relevant to an investigation and to request testimony from witnesses and participants in the case. I would like to entertain a motion.
I believe that there was revised wording that came out of a discussion that the subcommittee charged Rick, Rosetta, and me to have, and I sent that wording to Kaz earlier today.
Oh, that was today. Yes, you did.
My apologies. We're working from several different versions of the same document.
Yes, of course.
So I'm just going to dig that version out.
I see it.
I think it was in the email that that Kevin sent earlier today.
Yeah, I've got it. I can read it.
You got it?
Apologies.
No, it's my fault entirely.
So scratch that. The proposed wording is, the CRB shall have the power to request and obtain additional evidence, documents, medical records, surveillance footage, and other materials relevant to a case before the CRB and to request and obtain statements from witnesses and participants in the case. I see 2 hands up, and I don't know if Lindsay or Brian, if your hands are up because you want to speak, or okay, Lindsay does not.
I'm gonna lower my
Okay,
hand.
Jason?
I'll move that we approve that motion.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. So I'm going to open it for discussion. I see Jason's hand up.
I guess I might have missed this part, but can someone explain how that would interact with the auditor's office?
Daniel's got his hand up now.
Yeah, so
Daniel.
currently the CRB reviews a case with all the evidence that is presented to it from the investigation, the internal affairs investigation and the police auditor's office. What this would do is allow the CRB to look at those materials and say, hey, we have more questions that we want answered. We would like to see such and such, or we would like to have so-and-so answer some more questions. Does that answer your question, Jason?
Sort of. I'd like to hear from folks on who are currently on CRB, how they feel about this type of change. Like, would it
Rick,
solve
I might
what we're
ask
trying
you
to solve?
I'm going to ask Rick to speak to that first because Rick helped with that wording.
Yeah, when I met with Daniel yesterday, actually, we discussed this issue, and I indicated I was not going to be a supporter of it, but I would not object to offering it as a wording to be used in this motion. I think that the ordinance that Lindsay pointed out in her, or not Lindsay, but Leah pointed out in her presentation to us today for purposes of this overall meeting on, actually I was on body worn camera. It points out that we actually already do have access to everything that's available. I think that what Daniel's getting at is we should get more than is available through the IAPE or the internal affairs process. Because currently under our situation, the internal affairs division of the police department is the group that investigates these cases that come before the CRB and are presented to the auditor for decision. The way it works is that if a case needs to be seen by the internal affairs division, it gets investigated by a sergeant from that division. The report is made available to the auditor and to the chief, and then to the CRB. The auditor makes a recommendation on whether or not there's been a policy violation. And then the CRB speaks to the issue of whether there's been a policy violation. The chief, by the time the CRB gets it, the chief has usually already made a decision on whether or not there's been a policy violation. The role of the CRB at the present time is advisory to the auditor and to the city council. And it's a decision made about whether or not the investigation was complete by the IA's office, whether or not the people on the Citizens Review Board agreed with the recommendations by the staff line officers who have all reviewed the case also after IA has done its investigation. And then the CRB comments on that and makes a record of whether or not they agreed with
Rick, 30 seconds.
What the chief's position is. I don't have any problem with this language, but I do think that it's inapplicable at the present time. What I agree with is that we should go ahead and let people, if they want to, provide comment at the time of the CRB hearing if they're involved in the case, if they're a witness or they're a complaining party, and leave it at that. That's my position on it. Because it's already taken care of otherwise.
Lindsay, did you have anything to add?
I guess I don't understand the problem that they're trying to solve, so I don't know that I can speak to, I don't know if I can speak to your question, Jason. So I agree with what Rick said at the end, that people should not be barred from, as they currently are, from making comment at our CRB meetings pertaining to the cases that we're going to discuss. So I think that people who are witnesses or complainants or whatever should be able to come to the meeting where we discuss their case, and they should be allowed to make public comment. I have no problem at all with that. I guess the rest of it, I don't understand that the problem that is trying to be solved with it. So I don't know that I can speak to it very well.
Okay. Jason, is it clear as mud?
Even worse than mud. But I appreciate those perspectives, and I would like to make a friendly amendment to basically amend it to a recommendation that folks be able to provide not testimony, but provide comment to CRB. And or maybe whoever wrote the proposal will maybe speak to the reason why. what problem they're trying to solve? Because I'm not clear about that either.
So I see Brian's hand and I see Daniel who could maybe answer that question. So I'm gonna call on Daniel first and then Brian.
Yeah, well, we actually have another motion. It's number 6, which is specifically addressing being able to hear witnesses and participants at the time that they hear the case. And that also was passed unanimously by the subcommittee. So this motion that's on the table right now is specifically to allow the CRB to get additional information that may not have been part of the initial investigation. And so, again, this also might be one of those conditionals which rest on an expanded role for the CRB, which is not what we're discussing as part of this particular motion. So I might entertain adding a conditional if the investigative role of the CRB is expanded, then, and then the remaining text of the motion.
I have a point of clarification and then I'll call on Brian. When I'm looking at our packet, it says number 6, what it approved to table the motion. So if that's
sorry.
the case.
No, I'm sorry, I misread that. So yeah.
My apologies. We had a basically the number 5 and 6. The taglines are transposed on those. So it was 5 that was passed to unanimously table, and 6 then has the 4-1 approval. So 6 should be on the agenda.
Got it. We'll talk
And
about
5
that
was tabled pending the discussion that that Rick and Daniel were able to have.
Right, that we're currently having. Okay. Thank you for that. Brian.
Hi. First, I have a preliminary question. Daniel submitted a motion which I believe was unanimously passed by the subcommittee to create this law enforcement and CRB matrix, where the CRB is the fact finder. And prior to setting that up, current CRB or future CRB people would work with the chief of police to create a matrix or a predetermined standard of police misconduct and discipline, so that whatever fact finding the CRB did to create to say that this misconduct occurred, then it would just fit into that matrix or discipline. Now, my question is, did that not pass in front of the whole committee?
Motion number 9, Brian. The motions are presented in the order that they were passed by the committee. And I appreciate that that may cause some consternation when some of what is dealt with later on is different or relates to things that go earlier. But it seemed to be the simplest way to ensure that we weren't dropping items off of the bottom of the agenda. So it is motion number 9 in your packet.
Oh, I see.
Yep.
Yep, there it is. Okay. And to answer someone else's question about what we're trying to achieve, what we're trying to achieve is an external or citizen review of police misconduct. Currently, the police chief is the final arbiter. What we would like is for civilians to oversee police conduct. And the method we've developed, or Daniel developed, and I, among others, approve, is this fact finding into a matrix system, so that there is in actuality, a civilian oversight of police behavior, which there is not now. In attempting to achieve that, and I agree that perhaps this is backwards in the sense that we haven't given the CRB that matrix and fact-finding authority yet. So like Daniel said, we are once again in a position of granting them tools to do something they haven't been granted to do yet. In that regard, I would agree that, if the CRB, I guess now we can say if motion 9 passes, then CRB has this authority to collect all this evidence and witnesses and that sort of thing.
Okay, I see Lindsay's hand, and then I'm gonna ask for clarity about the motion, and then we're gonna vote. So, Lindsay?
I guess I would like, if everything hangs off of the tree of the CRB being granted different powers, can we please vote on that motion and then discuss all the other things that we want to hang on that tree? That would really help me, because otherwise we're just getting so speculative. So if we can talk about motion 9 first, that seems to be sort of the root, the thing that all these other things are related to, that we keep kind of coming back to this cart before the horse issue. So I guess I would request, may we table this motion until and move motion 9 up to the next thing that we discuss?
So 2 things come up for me. One is, I believe you would have to vote on that. The next is we have 15 minutes left of our time together tonight. So I'm wondering if we could have a vote on this motion that's on the table with the amendment that if number 9 passes, then this will happen. And then certainly I think the next thing that we talk about needs to be number 9. I don't know if we're gonna have time for that. What do folks think about that? I see some sad faces. Go ahead, Brian.
I was just gonna say, I agree, that would work for me. I would move that to that happening.
Okay. And Marty, how does that land for you? You were the one who seconded, I think. I might be making that up. Nope.
No, that
Daniel
was
and
the
Brian.
one. Yeah, I'm good with it. Yeah, 9 and 13 seem to be the critical, seem to be the tree upon which the others hang, to use Lindsay's analogy.
So I totally agree, and I'm asking if we can vote on this one with that amendment that had been suggested.
Yes, yeah, I'm fine adding that amendment, that conditional to the motion.
All right, I'm gonna call for a vote. We're starting at the top. Ems?
Yes.
Daniel?
Yes.
Betsy?
Abstain.
Macy?
Abstain.
Ibrahim Koulibaly? He's still with us. Okay, Ibrahim, if you can type it in the box, and I'll keep an eye on that. Otherwise, I'm moving on to Leah.
Abstain.
Abdul Rahman?
Yes.
Lindsay?
Abstain.
Ebe?
Just for clarity's sake, we are voting on number 9. Is that correct?
We're voting on number 5.
Okay.
And it's contingent on
If
number 9 passes.
okay, then yes, please.
Joel?
Yes.
Jason?
Abstain.
Brian,
Yes.
Silver,
Abstain.
Tana,
Yes.
Guadalupe,
Yes.
okay, I see Ibrahim posted in the chat that he looked yes on this. Alai, she's gone. Rick,
No.
David,
Yes.
Midas,
Yes.
and Marty.
Yes.
I have 12 yeses, 1 no, and 6 abstentions. The motion passes. I'm learning a lot about Robert's rules. I thought I knew, but I didn't. Thank you. Well, whoever said we couldn't get through all of it was not wrong, and we didn't get through all of it. We have 10 minutes left. I'm going to put this out to the group. If you are in for it, we can try to get through one more. There's no next steps that I need to walk through, so we do have 10 minutes. Do we want to talk about number 9? You're all very quiet.
It seems that number 9 also hinges on number 13. So I don't know. Because the number 9 is really regarding the disciplinary matrix, whereas number 13 is specifically the one that the CRB adjudicates cases, and that its ruling of fact in such cases shall be the final adjudication of that case. So I think 13 really is the root of the tree more so than anything else.
All right.
I also want to point out that we've taken a number of our meetings, these full 6, to deal specifically with this subcommittee's motions, and we haven't moved on to any of the other work. So
yeah, you are not wrong.
Yeah, and I would also point out that the committee members also ranked this topic as their highest priority.
We're also not wrong. Let's push through. Let's see if we can get through number 13 so that the next time we come together and we're voting on motions, we can get on to the next bit. We can work through these faster. So we're going to give it a try. The motion and this is a rewording. The motion reads: the CRB should adjudicate cases involving excessive use of force, abuse of authority, unlawful arrest, unlawful stop, unlawful searches, discourtesy or disrespectful behavior, use of offensive language, theft, and discriminatory behavior. The CRB shall review all complaints filed by residents. The CRB's ruling on the facts of such cases shall be the final adjudication of that case. I would like to entertain a motion.
I move that we approve this motion as read.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? Jason, is your hand up because you have something to say? Or is it left over?
No, just haven't figured out how to take it down. No,
Okay,
there.
perfect. Just checking. Sweet. I got Lindsay and then Rick.
Can the subcommittee clarify how they came up with the list of things, like the circumstances under which the CRB will have this purview? I would like to understand a little bit more about that.
To be honest, Lindsay, I got that list from articles linked to from Campaign Zero regarding community oversight, and this was a list of possible violations or actions by police officers that a civilian review board would review and adjudicate.
Thank you.
Wasn't specific to any of Eugene or that.
It's just because some of these things are, for example, crimes, and so they would be beyond the purview of the civilian review board, like theft, for example. So I'm trying to wrap my head around definitionally. I think that list is important, so I want to be intentional about how it's generated.
My understanding was this was more around policy violations, though some policy violations can also be crimes.
Thanks for the clarification.
I've got Rick and then Leah.
Thank you. I'll kind of echo what I've said before about this proposition. I think that this is going to take a total restructuring if that's what your desire is, to get the CRB to be an adjudicative body. It has been tried in other jurisdictions, including San Francisco and Chicago. And what has happened is that the adjudicative body has been a sit up on high type of body, usually composed of salaried people who are, for example, in San Francisco, they're paid $155,000 per person for 7 of them. And they sit there and they heard 12 cases last year. So it was pretty expensive. What that board does not do in that setting is do the investigation, because if the board is doing the investigation and finding the facts, it is being the prosecutor and the finder of facts. And that's not how our judicial or legal system works. You cannot have the prosecutor and the investigator being the judge and the jury as to what the facts were under the circumstances. So if you're going to have the CRB be this body that decides the facts, it needs to be insulated from all influences, including being the ones that investigated the case. Because what is the desire of a person investigating a case? And that is to establish that there's something was done wrong. That's what a prosecutor does. And unless we're going to turn this, if we're going to turn this into a trial where the CRB is going to be the fact finder, you're going to have to have another body do the investigation and present the evidence to the CRB so the decision can be made without the CRB's involvement in what charges are being made. And I just think that the whole thing needs to be reconsidered. I don't have any problem with looking at a restructuring, but I think that it needs to be at least in 2 or 3 parts. You have the CRB being the adjudicator, if that's what you really want, be the adjudicator of the facts and decide what happened and whether or not there's been a violation of policy. You need to have another body,
please. You
need to have another body do the investigation, and you could have the police auditor do that, or you could have the internal affairs do that, which is what's being done now. The internal affairs does it. Having internal affairs do it is extremely more inexpensive than having a group of 40 or 50 investigators available to the investigative body to submit the evidence to the CRB, because that's what it takes.
Time's up.
In Portland, for example, they've dedicated 5% of their police budget to the investigation process. And so I think this needs to be restructured, and I vote against it.
Okay, thank you. I've got Leah and then Marty. Actually, before y'all, I just want to do a time check. I'm going to ask you all for 10 more minutes, and I hope that that is okay.
Move that we add an additional 10 minutes and we can just do a show of hands on screen.
Awesome. Thanks, friends. Go ahead, Leah.
So really what I'd like is to hear from the committee kind of a response to the concerns that were just raised, because it does seem to me that it's kind of a little bit muddled, and I'm trying to pick apart really what the role of the CRB it would be with these changes. I'm struggling. So maybe just somebody could respond to those concerns.
If I may. Yeah. So currently the CRB just it doesn't really have any say in what happens. It just looks at the investigation and says, yes, this was conducted properly, or no, it wasn't. The idea behind this is that a police officer's conduct should be judged by the community standards, and the Civilian Review Board is the body that is representing the community in that and representing community standards, rather than the policing themselves. Because currently internal investigations does the investigation, the police chief rules on it, there's oversight by the police auditor's office, and there's the CRB on the side watching it all. And so this helps to ensure that police behavior is judged by community standards.
If I could just follow up, I guess what I'm saying is, it seems to me that this proposal changes the nature of the CRB.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I admit that it would take a amendment to the charter of the city in order to bring something like this to reality.
And I guess my question is, it seems like if we were going to change the nature of the CRB, there would be other things to consider as well.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a separate topic as to how investigations are conducted, but Rick is absolutely right that if you're to have an external investigative body, that it would need to be something other than the body that is adjudicating the case. But this is specifically just looking at adjudicating the case and reaching a finding of fact on the case.
Okay, I appreciate your answer. I get, for me, what I'm struggling with a little bit is that if we're going to really talk about changing the nature of the CRB, I wouldn't want to do it piecemeal like this, but rather like to. It's hard for me to pick out one little piece of that without having the bigger picture.
Right. But that's just how the subcommittee and the committee are structured in how we decide things.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I've got Marty next, and then Joel.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that based on what Rick was saying about conflicts of interest and having judge and jury and all that, doesn't it seem that that's what we have right now, except it's all in the hands of the EPD, and they get to do their own they can even do a soft-handed prosecution and adjudication. I mean, they get recommendations. The community oversight recommends, but isn't the final word. It points out to me that we really need to do something.
Okay. I've got, gosh. I'm trying to keep, I thought I saw Joel's hand.
Yeah, I'm
Are
up.
you-
I just put it down, but I'm still here. No, I think, thanks, Mo. I appreciate the robust discussion we're having right now, but just want to remind folks that we've got 5 minutes left, and it seems like we've discussed this pretty thoroughly. So I'd like to call for a vote.
All right. The vote has been called for. I'm gonna start at the top.
I believe we need a second, but I'm open to being
I
corrected.
said
on that.
second following the question.
Can I just point out something that would be very quickly?
Sorry, Brian, we have a call for a vote, and I think we're waiting for a second.
Okay. M.
You don't need a second for the call to vote, but I'll second.
Okay. M, did I hear you say yes?
Yes.
Thank you. Daniel.
Yes.
Betsy.
I abstain, but I need to just quickly say, because I'm not sure if I vote yes for this, then the fact finding is a no automatically, since we seem to discuss it can't be both. So I don't know whether to vote for it to be the adjudicative entity or whether it to be the fact finding entity. And I feel put in a bind, being asked to just vote to yes or no to the adjudicated. So
Right.
abstain.
Okay. Thank you. Macy.
Abstain.
Ibrahim Koulibaly.
Yes, Mo.
Thank you. Leah.
Abstain.
Abdul Rahman.
Abstain.
Lindsay.
Abstain.
Eve Hamide.
Abstain.
Joel.
I'll abstain.
Jason.
No, not as written.
Okay. Brian.
Yes.
Silver.
No, also not as written.
Okay. Tana.
Abstain.
Guadalupe.
I'll abstain also.
Okay. I think Ale is still not here. Rick Rosetta.
No.
David.
No, not as written. I think there's more to be done.
Okay. Midas.
Yeah. Or sorry, no, my bad.
Okay. Marty.
Yes.
So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yeses, 5 noes, and 9 abstentions. I'm going to ask the city attorney what that means because I'm not that good at Robert's rules.
Go again, yeah.
Well, it actually, whether, I know there's been a considerable amount of discussion regarding abstentions, and we've talked about this, but either way, whether you count, whether this body counted the votes present or the votes voting in present, the motion fails because you have to have a majority of yeses. So let's just take the abstentions out of it because I know that has been a point of concern and discussion. 5 to 5, is a fail.
Okay. Thank you. So that motion does not carry.
Does this mean it's removed from the table altogether? Because I don't necessarily want that to happen, but I just wasn't clear which way to vote.
It could come back on the table rewritten and be brought to a motion again.
Or a totally separate motion on the same subject could also be brought by any member of the committee. The subcommittee process is not binding. It's just a way to try and bring some focus and clarity to the process. If any member wanted to walk away, write up something on the basis of these discussions and submit it to us, it could be discussed at a subsequent meeting.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, we didn't make it through all of the motions, but we did put a good dent in them. There were a lot. So I appreciate your willingness to talk through this, and I appreciate your willingness to give me 10 more minutes of your time tonight. And I hope that you all have a beautiful rest of the night. We've got our next meeting on the 20th.
And just before everyone goes, quick reminder that the Use of Force Subcommittee is going to have its meeting next Wednesday evening, 6 o'clock till 8 o'clock.
Any word on those checks?
I am in the process of chasing up precisely what's going on with those, so I'll get back to you as soon as possible.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, all. Let's do this again, all.
Thanks, Mo.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Particularly thank you, city workers, for staying late.
Good night.
Bye for now.
See y'all later.
Thanks for